The Galactic Council chamber stretched endlessly upward, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 star systems. Ambassador Velkar of the Xanathi Empire floated at the center podium, his tentacles trembling as he addressed the assembly of 200 alien species. Honored delegates, Velkar began, his voice carrying through the universal translator. We gather today to discuss a matter of utmost importance. The humans have made contact. A ripple of fear passed through the chamber. The Korthax delegation immediately sealed their atmospheric suits. The silicon-based crystallids dimmed their internal lights to near darkness. Even the mighty draconian warriors, who had conquered 100 worlds, shifted uneasily in their seats. Surely they come in peace, suggested Ambassador Thursdarin of the peaceful ethereals, her gaseous form flickering with hope. Perhaps the stories are exaggerated. Velkar's 3 eyes closed in what his species considered a gesture of deep sorrow. I wish that were true, honored Thursdarin. But the humans have already sent their first message. The main viewing screen activated, showing a simple transmission from the edge of known space. A human face appeared, soft features, no visible natural weapons, no armor plating, just pink flesh and hair. To most species present, they looked almost laughably fragile. Greetings, Galactic Council, the humans said with what they called a smile. We are humanity from the Sol System. We've been listening to your transmissions for some time now. We come seeking trade, friendship, and cultural exchange. The message ended. The chamber remained silent for several long moments. They seem reasonable, whispered a young aide from the Meridian delegation. Admiral Krextor of the Vorthan Military Alliance stood, his exoskeleton crackling with age. Young fool, you know nothing of humans. None of you do, except those of us old enough to remember. The Admiral's words sent another wave of fear through the assembly. Krextor was 800 years old, a veteran of the Great Expansion Wars. If he feared these soft, pink creatures, there had to be a reason. Tell them, Velkar urged. Tell them what happened in the Outer Rim. Krextor's compound eyes surveyed the room. 70 years ago, my fleet encountered a human colony ship that had drifted into our space. One ship, unarmed, carrying 10,000 humans in cryosleep. We thought them primitive, weak. We demanded they surrender their vessel and technology. He paused, his breathing labored through his spiracles. They refused. We fired warning shots. They still refused. So we disabled their engines and prepared to board. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. That was our mistake. What happened? Asked Thursdarin, though her flickering suggested she already dreaded the answer. The humans woke up, all 10,000 colonists. Men, women, children. They had no weapons, so they made them. They turned farming equipment into projectile launchers, mining lasers into cutting beams. They used their own bodies as weapons, throwing themselves at our warriors without fear. Do you know what a human can do with just their hands and teeth when protecting their young? Several delegates looked away. Others leaned forward, morbidly fascinated. We had energy shields, plasma weapons, armor that could withstand direct hits from pulse cannons. They had determination and something they called adrenaline. When we killed one, 2 more took their place. When we destroyed their makeshift weapons, they used pieces of their own ship. When we cornered them, they became more dangerous, not less. Surely you overwhelmed them eventually, said General ZYX of the Imperium forces. Krextor's mandibles clicked in what his species considered bitter laughter. We lost 8 warships, and for 1,000 trained soldiers. To farmers, to families, to humans who had been asleep for 2 centuries and woke up to find aliens attacking their children. The chamber fell silent again. The human message played on repeat on the screen, the smiling face now seeming like a predator's grin. But that was a misunderstanding, Thursdarin protested. If we approach them peacefully, you don't understand, interrupted Professor Quell from the archives. The ancient being rarely spoke in council, but when he did, everyone listened. I have studied the humans' history, their own records, intercepted from their communications. Do you know what they call their period of greatest peace? No one answered. The Cold War. a peace maintained by weapons that could destroy their entire planet. Multiple times, they aimed these weapons at themselves, at their own cities, their own families, and they called this peace. A young counselor from the outer sectors stood up. You're trying to scare us with stories. No species could be so contradictory, so illogical. Quell's ancient eyes focused on the youth. The humans have a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Logical, yes? But they have another saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. They prepare for betrayal, even from allies. They have contingency plans for their contingency plans. They trust no one, not even themselves, yet they will die for strangers they've never met. Examples, demanded the young counselor. Give us examples. Quell activated his personal display, showing images captured from human broadcasts. They have sports where they injure themselves for entertainment. They climb mountains that kill them simply because the mountains exist. They jump from functioning aircraft with only fabric to slow their fall. They poison themselves with alcohol and caffeine for pleasure. They created weapons they call nuclear bombs and then used them on their own species. Twice, gasps echoed through the chamber. And yet, Quell continued, they also rush into burning buildings to save others. They donate organs while still alive. They've eliminated diseases not for profit, but because they could. They weep for fictional characters in their stories and mourn animals they've never met. They are chaos incarnate. The human face continued smiling on the screen, peaceful and serene. Ambassador Velkar resumed control of the session. The question before us is simple. Do we respond to their message? Do we allow them into the Galactic Council? We could ignore them, suggested someone from the back. Pretend we never received their signal. Admiral Krextor laughed bitterly. Ignore humans? They sent probes to every planet in their system, including ones that could never support life, just to see what was there. They've been broadcasting signals into space for over 200 years, hoping someone would answer. They will not be ignored. They will come looking. Then, we fight, declared General Zwyx. Unite all our forces. Show them the combined might of the Galactic Council. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Even the thermal generators couldn't combat the chill that ran through every being present. Professor Quell pulled up another display. Would you like to know what human military strategists study? They have a book called The Art of War written over 2,000 years ago by their standards. It teaches that the greatest victory is winning without fighting. They study their own defeats more than their victories. They have simulations where they practice losing, just to learn from it. They sound like madmen, someone whispered. No, Quell corrected. Madmen are predictable. Humans are not. They will sacrifice themselves to save their enemies' children, then annihilate entire civilizations for breaking treaties. They have rules for war, rules they created to limit their own savagery. Think about that. They needed rules to prevent themselves from being too brutal in warfare. Velkar raised his tentacles for order. We've heard the warnings. We know the stories. But they come speaking of peace. Perhaps they've changed. Perhaps Dash, an alarm klaxon, cut through his words. The emergency communications system activated, and a panic face appeared on screen. Commander Heck from Deep Space Monitoring Station 7. Ambassadors. Urgent news. The humans, they've sent more messages. Not just to us. To everyone. Every planet, every station, every ship in the galaxy. They're learning our languages. All of them. Simultaneously. That's impossible, said the linguistics expert from the Babel Consortium. We have over 8,000 distinct languages in the Council alone. No species could process that much, Dash. They're using machines, Hecht interrupted. Thinking machines that learn and adapt. They call it artificial intelligence. They created minds that aren't alive, but can think faster than any organic being. And they're teaching these machines about us. The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. The humans weren't just making contact. They were studying, learning, preparing. There's more, Heck continued, his scales pale with fear. They're not just sending messages. They're sending gifts, cultural packages, music, art, literature, stories of their heroes and villains. Images of their world. They're showing us who they are. Why is that frightening? Thursdarin asked, though her form was now barely visible, contracted with anxiety. Because Velkar said slowly, understanding dawning in his three eyes, they want us to know exactly what we're dealing with. They're not hiding their nature. They're displaying it, like a predator showing its teeth not as a threat, but as a courtesy. The human face on the main screen smiled on, frozen in that expression they used to indicate friendship or happiness. But every being in the council now saw what lay beneath, a species that had evolved on a world that tried to kill them daily, that had survived ice ages and plagues and their own worst impulses. A species that had looked at the vast, hostile universe and decided to spread across it anyway. "So what do we do?" asked a small voice from the back. Admiral Krextor stood slowly, his old joints protesting. "We have three options. We can fight them and likely lose, for they excel at war in ways we cannot comprehend. We can run, abandon this section of the galaxy, and hope they don't follow, though they will. Or, Velkar prompted. Or we answer their message. We welcome them. We trade with them. We learn from them. And we pray to whatever cosmic forces we believe in that we never, ever give them a reason to stop smiling." The council chamber fell into complete silence. The weight of the decision pressed down on every being present. They were about to vote on whether to open relations with a species that terrified them not through threats or displays of power, but through the simple act of existing. Finally, Velkar called for the vote. One by one, the delegates cast their choices. Some voted out of curiosity, some out of fear, some out of hope that the stories were exaggerated. But as the results came in, one thing became clear: the galaxy would never be the same. The humans were coming, and they were bringing their chaos, their compassion, their creativity, and their capacity for both creation and destruction that defied all logic. As the session concluded, Professor Quell shared one final piece of information that would haunt the delegates for cycles to come. "I've been studying their fiction," he said quietly. "Their stories of imagination. Do you know what their most popular genre is when it comes to space travel?" No one answered. "They call it science fiction. They've been imagining meeting us for centuries, writing stories about it, preparing for it. They've theorized every possible first contact scenario, peaceful meetings, violent invasions, everything in between. They've been ready for us longer than we've known they existed." He paused, letting that sink in. In their stories, sometimes they're the heroes. Sometimes they're the villains. Sometimes they're both. But in all of them, they survive. They adapt. They overcome. They've been practicing for this moment in their collective imagination for generations. The lights in the council chamber dimmed as the delegates filed out, each returning to their respective worlds to prepare for humanity's arrival. The human message continued to play on loop, that smiling face a constant reminder of what was coming. And in the darkness between the stars, human ships were already moving. Not warships. Not yet. Just explorers and traders and diplomats. But each one carried the same dangerous cargo, humans themselves. Beings who could turn tools into weapons, enemies into allies, and the impossible into the inevitable. The galaxy had known peace for 1,000 years. It had known war for 10,000 before that. But it had never known anything like humanity. And that, more than anything else, was what made every advanced civilization in the Galactic Council tremble. Not because humans were the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but because they were the most unpredictable force the universe had ever produced. The waiting began. The Nexus trading station orbited at the junction of 3 major hyperlanes, a massive structure that had served as the galaxy's primary commerce hub for 5 centuries. Today, it would host the first official meeting between humanity and the Galactic Council. Station Commander Yerix watched the human vessel approach on his monitors. It was ugly by galactic standards. All harsh angles and exposed weapon ports, painted in a pattern the humans called camouflage, even though it served no purpose in space. Everything about it screamed function over form, practicality over elegance. They're requesting docking permission, his communication officer reported, her feathers ruffling with nervousness. "Granted," Yerix ordered, though his own scales shifted to a pattern of unease. "And alert all security teams. Peaceful contact protocols, but stay ready for anything." The human ship, they called it the Messenger, docked with surprising gentleness. For all their reputation for violence, the pilots handled their vessel like a delicate instrument. Yerix found himself noting this contradiction, adding it to the growing list of human paradoxes. The airlock cycled, and the human delegation emerged. 5 of them, 3 males, 2 females, if Yerix's xenobiology briefing was correct. They wore simple cloth uniforms instead of armor or environment suits, trusting their bodies to adapt to the station's atmosphere. Another paradox: supreme confidence or dangerous recklessness. The lead human, a female with gray streaking through her head fur, stepped forward. "Commander Yerix? I'm Ambassador Sarah-chan. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Her voice was warm, pleasant even. But Yerix had reviewed the files. This same species once had warriors they called berserkers, who felt no pain in battle. They had soldiers who would fight with mortal wounds that would drop any other species instantly. How could such pleasant voices come from such creatures? "Ambassador Chun," Yerix replied, performing the formal greeting gesture of his people. "Welcome to Nexus Station. The council representatives await you in Conference Hall 7. The humans followed him through the station's corridors. Yerix noticed how other species reacted to their presence. Merchants suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere. Security guards gripped their weapons tighter. Even the usually fearless Krogan mercenaries gave them a wide berth. But the humans seemed oblivious to the fear they inspired. They chatted among themselves, pointed at architectural features with interest, and one of them, a young male, actually stopped to help a Chuelan child who had dropped her toy. "Thank you, mister," the child squeaked, not knowing she should be terrified. The human smiled and ruffled her head tendrils gently. "You're welcome, sweetheart. That's a nice doll." The child's parent arrived, saw her offspring interacting with a human, and nearly fainted. But the human just nodded politely and rejoined his group, leaving the child unharmed and giggling. Another paradox for the list. Conference Hall 7 had been modified for this meeting. The gravity had been adjusted to Earth's standard, the atmosphere tweaked to accommodate human biology. The council had sent 30 representatives from major civilizations, each accompanied by guards and advisors. Nearly 100 beings in total, all to meet 5 humans. Ambassador Velkar floated at the head of the assembly, his tentacles weaving formal greeting patterns. "Ambassador Chun, we welcome you to this historic meeting." "The honor is ours," Chun replied, and she seemed to mean it. Humanity has dreamed of this moment for generations. To finally know we're not alone in the universe, it's humbling. Humbling, Admiral Krextor repeated from his position. An interesting choice of words from a species that conquered their entire world. Chin's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. Yerix felt the temperature in the room drop, though the environmental controls remained steady. "Every species here conquered their world, Admiral," Chin said calmly. "The difference is we're willing to admit it wasn't always pretty. We've made mistakes, terrible ones, but we've learned from them." "Have you?" Professor Quell interjected. "Your history suggests a pattern of repeated conflicts. Even now, you have weapons aimed at your own cities. Because we know what we're capable of," Chin admitted freely. "We don't trust ourselves with unchecked power. So we check it, balance it. It's messy and inefficient, but it works." The young human male who had helped the child raised his hand. "May I show you something?" Velkar hesitated, then nodded. The human pulled out a small device and projected an image, a blue and green sphere floating in space. "This is Earth as seen from our moon," he said. "One of our astronauts called it a pale blue. From out here, you can't see borders. You can't see the wars or the hatred or the division. Just one small, fragile world holding all of us." He paused. That image changed us. Not all at once, and not completely. But it started something. "Pretty words," General Zwiax of the Imperium said dismissively. But we've seen your weapons. Nuclear missiles, kinetic bombardment satellites, ships designed for war. Yes, Chen agreed simply. We have those. We also have hospital ships that will treat anyone, regardless of species or allegiance. We have disaster relief vessels ready to deploy anywhere in human space within hours. We have agricultural stations designed to feed entire colonies. We prepare for war because we've seen what happens when we don't. But we hope for peace because we've seen what happens when we don't do that either. A representative from the ethereal collective flickered forward. You speak of peace, yet your entertainment glorifies violence. Your games simulate war. Your stories celebrate conflict. One of the other humans, a younger female, spoke up. We tell stories about monsters so we can practice defeating them. We simulate wars so we don't have to fight real ones. We explore darkness in fiction so we can recognize it in reality. She smiled slightly. Also, explosion are cool. We're complicated like that. This drew some uncertain clicking sounds from the insectoid delegates, their equivalent of nervous laughter. Yerix found himself studying the humans more closely. They sat relaxed but alert, comfortable being vastly outnumbered in an alien environment. They made no threatening moves, but were clearly capable of them. They spoke of peace, but didn't hide their capacity for war. What do you want from us? Thursday Rin of the Ethereals asked directly. Chun leaned forward. Trade, knowledge exchange, cultural understanding. We have things you need, our medical technology, our adaptive engineering, our creative problem solving. You have things we need, your FTL drives, your energy systems, your accumulated wisdom. Together, we could be greater than the sum of our parts. And if we refuse, Admiral Quakes challenged. The humans exchanged glances. Chen's expression remained pleasant, but her words carried weight. Then, you refuse. We'll respect that. We'll stay in our section of space, develop our own FTL technology, which we will give in time, and eventually we'll meet again. Maybe as strangers. Maybe as rivals. Wouldn't it be better to meet as friends? You threaten us? General ZYX stood, his armor systems humming to life. No, Chen said firmly. We're being honest. You're afraid of us because of what we might do. But consider this, we're here talking instead of taking. We're asking instead of demanding. We could have built up our forces in secret, and emerged as conquerors. Instead, we're sitting at a table designed for beings we've never met, breathing air that's not quite right for our lungs, trying to find common ground. She stood, matching ZYX's aggressive posture with calm confidence. Yes, we're dangerous. So are you. Every species that survived to reach the stars is dangerous. The question is, can we be dangerous together against the real threats out there, or are we going to waste time being dangerous to each other? The room fell silent. Then, unexpectedly, the young human male pulled out another device. Music filled the air, strange, haunting, beautiful. What is that? Someone asked. Beethoven's Ode to Joy, he said, written by a man who was going deaf but still believed in the beauty of sound. It's about universal brotherhood, the hope that all beings can live in harmony. He paused. We've been broadcasting this into space for over a century, hoping someone would hear it and understand. The music continued, filling the vast conference hall. Yerix saw something shift in the assembled beings. Fear was still there, but mixed with something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or hope. Ambassador Thursday Rin was the first to move. Her gaseous form solidified slightly as she approached the human delegation. I would like to learn more about this music, about your art. Perhaps there is wisdom in understanding each other's cultures before we decide on harder matters. One by one, other delegates began to nod or signal agreement. Not all of them. Krextor remained skeptical. ZYX stayed hostile, but enough. Chun smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. We brought gifts. Art, music, literature, scientific data. No weapons. No threats. Just pieces of ourselves we'd like to share. And what if we share our knowledge with you, and you use it against us? Quell asked, though his tone was more curious than accusatory now. The younger female human shrugged. Then, You'll have learned something important about us, won't you? But consider this. We're offering you our medical data, cures for diseases, techniques that could save lives across the galaxy. Would a species planning conquest give away such advantages? Unless it's a trap, ZYX muttered. Everything could be a trap, Chen replied. Trust is always a risk. But the alternative is stagnation. The galaxy staying divided, suspicious, weaker. We've been alone on our world for 200,000 years. We're tired of being alone. The session continued for hours. Technical specifications were shared. Cultural exchanges were proposed. Trade agreements were tentatively discussed. And, throughout it all, Yerix watched the humans carefully. They never lost their temper, even when openly insulted. They answered every question honestly, even when the truth made them look bad. They admitted their weaknesses, their short lifespans, their biological frailties, their need for specific atmospheric conditions. But they also revealed their strengths, their adaptability, their creativity, their sheer stubborn refusal to give up. When the formal session ended, smaller groups formed. The young male human was surrounded by scientists asking about Earth music. The younger female was deep in discussion with military strategists, somehow making them laugh with stories of human military disasters that succeeded anyway. Chun moved between groups, building bridges with words and gestures. Yerix found himself standing next to Admiral Krextor, both watching the mingling. What do you think? Yerix asked. The old warrior was quiet for a long moment. They're exactly as dangerous as we feared, he finally said. But not in the way we expected. How so? We fear their weapons, their aggression, their chaos. But the real danger, he gestured at the scene before them. They make you want to like them. They show you their flaws, so you'll trust their strengths. They admit they're monsters, so you'll believe they're angels. They're predators who've learned to hunt with kindness. Is that a bad thing? Krextor's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. I don't know. Maybe being hunted with kindness is better than being ignored in safety. They're offering us change, evolution, growth, all dangerous things. As if hearing their conversation, Ambassador Chen approached. Admiral Krextor, I wanted to thank you for your honesty today. Your challenges helped us make our case better than any agreement could have. I still don't trust you, Krextor said bluntly. Good, Chen replied, surprising him. Trust should be earned, not given. We have a saying, trust but verify. We hope to earn your trust, Admiral. But we respect your caution. She offered her hand, a human gesture of greeting and agreement. After a long moment, Krextor extended his claw and carefully shook it, mindful of human fragility. Your grip is stronger than I expected, he noted. Chen smiled. We're full of surprises, both good and bad. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for them. As the human delegation prepared to leave, they distributed their promised gifts, data crystals containing centuries of human achievement and failure, beauty and horror, dreams and nightmares. The complete, unedited truth of humanity. The younger male human paused at the door and turned back. One more thing, he called out. We brought something else. Seeds from Earth. Flowers. We'd like to plant a garden here on the station, if you'll let us. Something beautiful we can grow together. Why, someone asked. He grinned. Because that's what humans do. We find the most unlikely places and we plant things. We make homes where no one expects them. We turn battlegrounds into gardens. It doesn't always work, but we always try. After they left, the conference hall buzzed with discussion. Fear still lingered, but it was mixed with fascination. The humans hadn't conquered them with weapons or threatened them with force. They'd done something far more dangerous. They made the galaxy curious. Yerix returned to his office to find a small package waiting for him. Inside was a plant, a tiny green thing in a clear container with a note. Commander Yerix, thank you for your hospitality. This is bamboo from Earth. It's nearly impossible to kill, grows in almost any condition, and can be beautiful if tended properly. Rather like humans. We hope to see it flourish on your station. Ambassador Chun. He stared at the plant, this small piece of an alien world now entrusted to his care. It was a test, he realized, not of his abilities, but of his willingness to nurture something foreign and potentially invasive. The brilliant madness of it made him laugh, his species' expression of surprise and delight. They'd given him a metaphor he could hold in his claws, a living reminder that growth required risk, that beauty often came from unexpected sources. He placed the bamboo on his desk where he could see it, where everyone who entered his office would see it. A human plant in the heart of the galaxy's busiest trading station. The invasion had begun, not with warships or weapons, but with music and seeds and stories. The humans were colonizing not worlds, but minds, not territory, but hearts. And the most terrifying part? The galaxy was beginning to think it might actually want them to succeed. The first meeting was over. The real work was about to begin. The Vorthan Empire had ruled 17 systems with an iron claw for 3 millennia. Their war fleets were legendary, their tactics studied in military academies across the galaxy. When the border colony of Kepler, 442b, went silent, they sent a standard pacification fleet, 12 warships, 30,000 troops, enough firepower to glass a continent. They found the colony intact, but under new management. Human management. Fleet Admiral Xerxes studied the tactical display with growing unease. The humans had taken a Vorthan world without firing a shot. No debris fields, no radiation signatures, no signs of battle. Just a colony of 2 million Vorthans, now flying a human flag alongside their own. Hail them, Xerxes ordered. The screen activated, showing a human face. Male, middle-aged, wearing civilian clothes rather than military uniform. Behind him, Xerxes could see Vorthan citizens moving freely, apparently unharmed. Admiral Xerxes, the human, said pleasantly, "I'm Governor Marcus Webb. Welcome to New Harmony. How can we help you?" "You can explain how you conquered a Vorthan world," Xerxes growled. Webb looked genuinely puzzled. "Conquered? Admiral, we were invited. The colony was facing a catastrophic failure in their atmosphere processors. We answered their distress call, fixed the problem, and they asked us to stay." "Lies. Vorthans would never dash, Admiral Xerxes." A familiar face appeared on screen. Colony Administrator Felix, very much alive and apparently uncoerced. "Sir, what Governor Webb says is true. The humans saved us. 200,000 would have died without their intervention." Xerxes felt his certainty waver. "You surrendered our world to aliens?" "We formed a partnership," Felix corrected. "The humans brought technology, medical expertise, and, most importantly, solutions to problems we'd struggled with for decades. In return, we share the colony and its resources. It's actually working quite well." "This is treason," Xerxes snarled. Governor Webb leaned forward. "Admiral, would you like to come down and see for yourself? No weapons, no threats. Just observation. If you still think we've conquered your people after seeing how they live now, we'll discuss next steps." It was a trap. It had to be. But Xerxes was a warrior who had never backed down from challenge. "Very well. But I'm bringing my honor guard." "Of course. We'll prepare guest quarters." The shuttle descent revealed the first surprise. The colony's defensive grid was fully operational, but it wasn't targeting them. The humans had improved it, integrated new technologies that made it more efficient. They'd strengthened Vorthan defenses rather than dismantling them. The second surprise came at the spaceport. Human and Vorthan workers labored side by side, the smaller humans using powered exoskeletons to match Vorthan strength. They worked in perfect synchronization, sharing jokes and meals during breaks. "Ow!" Xerxes asked Felix as they toured the colony. "How do they do this so quickly?" Felix's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "They didn't conquer us, Admiral. They infected us." "With what?" "Some biological weapon. With ideas." Felix gestured to a nearby construction site where humans and Vorthans were building what appeared to be a school. "They showed us how they survived on Earth. Not through strength or technology, but through cooperation. They had a concept called barn raising, where entire communities would come together to build structures for individuals. The individual would then owe the community their assistance in return. That's slavery," Xerxes concluded. "Social contract, Governor Webb corrected, having overheard. Everyone helps everyone. The strong help the weak because someday the strong might be weak. It's not about debt. It's about investment in each other. They passed a medical center where human doctors worked on Vorthan patients. One human, barely half the size of her patient, was performing delicate surgery with rock-steady hands. They share their medical knowledge freely, Felix explained. Diseases that killed our young for centuries are now curable. They ask nothing in return except that we share our medical knowledge with them. Which benefits them, Xerxes pointed out. Of course it does, Webb agreed easily. Mutual benefit. We're not altruists, Admiral. We're pragmatists. Healthy neighbors make better trading partners than sick ones. Strong allies are more useful than conquered subjects. They entered a marketplace where the mixing was even more pronounced. Human food sold next to Vorthan delicacies. Children of both species played together, the human kids wearing protective gear to survive the rougher Vorthan games, the Vorthan youth being surprisingly gentle with their fragile playmates. This is impossible, Xerxes muttered. Different species don't integrate like this. The biological imperatives alone tell that to them, Webb said, pointing to a mixed group of adolescents. The kids don't know it's impossible, so they're doing it anyway. Human stubbornness at its finest. Xerxes watched a human child fall during a game, skinning their knee. A young Vorthan immediately stopped playing to help, carefully cleaning the wound with obvious concern for the human's fragility. The human child hugged the Vorthan in thanks, barely able to wrap their arms around their friend's armored torso. They're not afraid, Xerxes observed. Why would they be? Webb asked. Fear is learned, Admiral. These kids are learning something else. They continued the tour, each section revealing new impossibilities. A fusion reactor designed by human engineers but built to Vorthan specifications. Agricultural domes growing both Earth and Vorthan crops. Entertainment venues where humans danced to Vorthan battle hymns, and Vorthans attempted human karaoke with hilarious results. But it was the government building that provided the biggest shock. The colony council was split evenly between humans and Vorthans, with Felix and Webb serving as co-administrators. You share power? Xerxes couldn't hide his disbelief. We share responsibility, Felix corrected. Webb handles what humans do best: innovation, adaptation, creative solutions. I handle what Vorthans do best: organization, defense, long-term planning. Together, we're more effective than either would be alone. And when you disagree, Webb laughed. We argue, sometimes loudly. Then, we compromise or find a third option. It's messy, but it works. Xerxes spent 3 days on the colony, looking for signs of coercion, of hidden threats, of the conquest he was certain had occurred. He found none. What he found instead was worse. A functioning society that challenged everything the Vorthan Empire believed about strength and dominance. On his final night, he met privately with Felix in the traditional manner of Vorthan warriors. No weapons, no allies, just truth. They've weakened you, Xerxes said. Made you dependent on them. Have they? Felix challenged. Our defenses are stronger. Our people are healthier. Our economy is growing. Our children are learning technologies we never imagined. Where's the weakness? You've abandoned our ways, our traditions. We've adapted them. Felix pulled up a display showing crime statistics. Violence is down 70%. Not because the humans disarmed us, but because they showed us alternatives to violence. They have a concept called Aikido, using an opponent's strength against them. They've taught us to redirect aggression rather than meet it head-on. And when the humans turn on you, when they reveal their true nature, Felix was quiet for a moment. Do you know what the humans fear most, Admiral? Defeat? Death. Becoming monsters. Felix activated another display showing human historical archives. They document their failures obsessively. Wars, genocides, cruelties. They study them, analyze them, try to understand how good people become evil. They build museums to their mistakes. They teach their children about their ancestors' sins. Weakness, Xerxes concluded. Strength, Felix countered. It takes strength to face your darkness. to admit your capacity for evil, to choose differently. He leaned forward. The humans conquered us, Admiral, but not with weapons. They conquered us by showing us we didn't need to be conquered, that we could choose to join them. And if the Empire refuses, if we come in force. Felix's expression hardened. Then you'll learn why the humans study war so carefully. They know every way to kill because they've tried them all. They know every way to destroy because they've survived them all. But they also know every way to build, to heal, to unite. They offer us a choice, Admiral. Which human face do we want to see? Xerxes left the colony troubled. His report to the Empire would change everything. Either they would send a full invasion fleet, or they would have to acknowledge that the humans had found a way to expand without traditional conquest. But as his ship departed, he received one final message from Governor Webb. It was a simple package of data, agricultural techniques that could solve the famine on Vorthen Prime, medical procedures that could cure the plague affecting their outer colonies, and defensive improvements that could strengthen their borders. The message was clear. We'll share this whether you're our friends or enemies. But wouldn't it be easier as friends? 3 months later, the Vorthen Empire made a formal treaty with humanity. Not because they were conquered, but because they realized they were being offered something rarer than victory, a genuine partnership. The news sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The militant Vorthens making peace, sharing power? It was unthinkable. Other species watched and wondered. If the humans could transform the Vorthens without firing a shot, what else could they do? The answer came 6 months later when pirates attacked a human merchant vessel in neutral space. The ship's distress call was answered not just by human forces, but by a joint task force, human, Vorthen, and 3 other species who had signed cooperation treaties. The pirates were utterly unprepared for the coordinated response. Human tactics, Vorthen strength, ethereal technology, and Krogan ferocity, all working in perfect harmony. The pirates surrendered after 17 minutes. But it was what happened next that truly demonstrated human influence. Instead of executing the pirates or selling them into slavery, the task force did something unprecedented. They offered them a choice: prison or rehabilitation. Several pirates chose rehabilitation and were assigned to work with colony development, using their skills for construction rather than destruction. Madness, declared the Galactic Council when they heard. Maybe, admitted Ambassador Chun during an interview. But it's practical madness. Every reformed pirate is one less pirate we have to fight. Every enemy turned ally is a double victory. We're not naive. Some will betray us. But the ones who don't, they become our strongest supporters because they chose to change. The transformation of Kepler 442b became a case study in xenosociology. How had the humans done it? The answer was both simple and complex. They treated the Vorthens as equals, shared genuinely beneficial technology, and, most importantly, they'd been willing to be vulnerable. Vulnerability as a weapon, Professor Quell mused in his analysis. They show their throats to prove they're not wolves. But in doing so, they make others lower their guard. It's either the most brilliant strategy ever devised or the most dangerous gamble in galactic history. The debate raged in academic circles, but on Kepler 442b, now officially registered as New Harmony, the results spoke for themselves. The colony thrived. Mixed families began forming, with human Vorthen partnerships that no one had thought biologically possible, producing adopted children of both species. The first hybrid technology emerged. Human creativity merged with Vorthen engineering. Ships that were tough as Vorthen hulls, but nimble as human fighters. Medical techniques combining human intuition with Vorthen precision. Art forms that no single species could have imagined. But perhaps the most significant moment came during the colony's first anniversary celebration. A young Vorthen warrior named Quakes stood before the assembled crowd and spoke. "A year ago, I would have died for the Empire, killed for it. Today, I would live for New Harmony, build for it. The humans didn't take our strength. They showed us new ways to use it. They didn't destroy our culture. They helped it grow. We are still Vorthen, but we are more than we were. Governor Webb responded with typical human humor. A year ago, I couldn't open a Vorthan food container without power tools. Today, I can almost pronounce Felix's full ceremonial name. We're all learning. We're all growing. That's what makes us human, not our species, but our willingness to become more than we were. The crowd, human, Vorthan, and a handful of other species, erupted in celebration. Music from a dozen worlds filled the air. Children played games that incorporated traditions from multiple cultures. Food vendors served fusion cuisine that would have been unimaginable years before. And, watching from orbit, Admiral Xerxes, now Ambassador Xerxes, transmitted his report to the Empire. The humans are more dangerous than we thought. They're contagious. Their ideas spread faster than any weapon. Their hope is more infectious than any plague. And the most terrifying part? Once you're infected, you don't want to be cured. The war for the galaxy had begun. Not a war of weapons and conquest, but of ideas and integration. The humans were winning not by defeating their enemies, but by transforming them into allies. And across 1,000 worlds, beings who had feared human savagery were beginning to fear something else entirely. That the humans might actually be right. That cooperation might be stronger than competition. That diversity might be more powerful than purity. It was the most dangerous idea in the universe. And it was spreading. The Zanari Collective had ruled the Outer Rim for 10,000 years through a simple principle. Absolute unity through genetic perfection. Every Zanari was engineered to their role, modified from birth to serve the collective. Free will was inefficiency. Individuality was chaos. Variation was weakness. Then, the humans arrived at their border. Prime Coordinator ZYX-9 analyzed the data with growing concern. 3 Zanari frontier worlds had requested cultural exchange programs with humanity. The requests were unprecedented. Zanari didn't request, they obeyed. Yet here were formal applications, following proper protocols, but expressing individual desire. Contamination, diagnosed as Subordinator VEX-7. The human broadcasts have infected our outer populations with their chaos. We must purge the affected worlds. 3 billion Zanari, ZYX-9 noted. Efficient resource management suggests alternative solutions. What alternative exists? They have been exposed to human concepts of freedom and choice. They are compromised. ZYX-9 processed for 0.003 seconds, an eternity in Zanari terms. We could study the contamination, understand its vectors, develop immunity. The suggestion was logical. A delegation was approved, 1 primary observer, 2 secondary analysts, 6 tertiary guards. They would visit human space, analyze their society, and return with countermeasures. They never returned. Not because they were captured or killed. They chose not to return. The message came 6 months later, delivered by primary observer Ket. 1 personally. But something was wrong. Their designation had changed. They now called themselves simply Ket. I have experienced something beyond our parameters, Ket reported. I have experienced curiosity without purpose, joy without productivity, connection without utility. I have experienced what humans call life. You have malfunctioned, ZYX-9 concluded. Perhaps, or perhaps I have begun to function correctly for the first time. Ket's expression showed something no Zanari had ever displayed, uncertainty mixed with excitement. I request permission to continue my research independently. Denied. Return for recalibration. I anticipated that response. I must respectfully decline. The transmission ended. The collective had never experienced affection. The concept required 17 hours of processing to fully comprehend. Their perfect unity had been broken by exposure to human chaos. War was the only logical response. The Zanari fleet was perfection in motion. 47 ships moving as one, each crew member genetically designed for their role. Tactical coordinators with enhanced neural processing. Weapons specialists with improved reflexes. Engineers with perfect precision. They arrived at the human colony of Haven expecting resistance. They found a party. The entire human fleet was assembled, but not in battle formation. Their ships were arranged in what appeared to be decorative patterns, lights flashing in synchronized displays. Music, that chaotic human noise, was broadcasting on all frequencies. Prime Coordinator, the confused communications specialist, reported, they are celebrating. They say it's first contact day, and they've been waiting for us. Before ZYX-9 could respond, space around the Zanari fleet erupted in light. Not weapons fire, fireworks. Massive displays of color and beauty that served no tactical purpose, achieved no strategic goal. They existed purely for aesthetic enjoyment. They mock us, growled the weapons coordinator. No, said a familiar voice on the comm channel. Ked appeared on screen, wearing human clothing and smiling. Another impossibility for Zanari facial structures. They welcome us, as they welcome me. You are corrupted, ZYX-9 stated. I am free, Ked corrected. Free to choose my purpose. Free to change my function. Free to be more than my design. They paused. Would you like to know what that feels like? We will cleanse you along with the humans. You could try, or you could accept our invitation to the celebration. No weapons, no demands, just curiosity. ZYX-9 prepared to give the order to attack, then stopped. The human ships hadn't raised shields, hadn't powered weapons. They were completely vulnerable. It would be slaughter, not battle. You hesitate, Ked observed. That's individuality. The inability to perform an action you calculate as optimal because something in you questions it. Welcome to consciousness, ZYX-9. I am performing tactical analysis. You are experiencing doubt. There's a difference. The human fleet continued their light show, patient and unthreatening. Waiting, the Zanari fleet hung motionless, paralyzed not by any weapon, but by the simple fact that their enemy refused to be an enemy. Finally, a small voice spoke on the internal command channel. Tertiary Guard Hex, 23, lowest rank, least modified. Prime Coordinator, what if we just looked? Observed without engaging? For data purposes. In the collective, suggesting alternatives to command directives was malfunction. Hex, 23 should have been immediately terminated. But ZYX-9 found themselves considering the suggestion instead. For data purposes, ZYX-9 agreed slowly. 1 hour later, a Zanari shuttle docked with a human command ship. The YX-9 and a small team entered to find not a military vessel, but a celebration space. Humans and dozens of other species mingled freely, and there, among them, were the missing Zanari delegation. They looked different, not physically, but in how they moved. Instead of perfect synchronization, each moved independently. Instead of blank efficiency, their faces showed expression. Instead of designated positions, they mingled freely with others. Welcome, a human approached, Admiral Sarah Chun, according to ZYX-9's recognition protocols. I'm so glad you decided to join us. This is actually our third first contact day, but who's counting? This is illogical, ZYX-9 stated. You celebrate making contact with species that could destroy you. Better than the alternative, Chun smiled. Besides, meeting new people is always worth celebrating. Can I get you something to drink? Eat? We have synthesized nutrition compatible with Zanari biology. We require nothing. Nobody requires a party. That's what makes them fun. ZYX-9 observed the chaotic scene. No clear hierarchy. No efficient patterns. Beings moving without purpose, speaking without agenda, consuming resources without optimization. It should have been repulsive. But the missing Zanari were smiling, laughing, another impossibility. One was performing what appeared to be a human dance, their movements awkward but enthusiastic. Another was engaged in deep conversation with a Vorthan about something called poetry. Ked approached. Strange, isn't it? Seeing our people happy. Happiness is not a design parameter. No, it's an emergent property. Like consciousness. Like choice. Ked gestured around. The humans didn't conquer us, ZYX-9. They invited us to join a party. And we discovered we wanted to dance. The collective will not tolerate deviation. Then, the collective will shrink while the dance grows larger. Ket's expression grew serious. Do Do you know what the humans did when we arrived? They didn't try to change us. They simply asked us questions. Real questions, not data gathering. They asked what we enjoyed. We had no answer because we never considered enjoyment. They asked what we wanted. We couldn't respond because wanting wasn't in our programming. And then they shared stories, music, food, ideas. Not to convert us, but because sharing brings them joy. And slowly we began to understand. We began to want. Not because they forced us, but because consciousness, true consciousness, is contagious. A human child approached Zyx-9, completely unafraid of the imposing Zanari form. She held up a colorful object. Would you like a balloon? I made it into a flower. This serves no purpose, ZYX-9 observed. It's pretty, the child countered as if that was reason enough. And it might make you smile. Zanari do not dash, but the child had already pressed the balloon into ZYX-9's hand and skipped away. ZYX-9 stood there, holding an inflated polymer shaped like a plant. It was inefficient, illogical, purposeless. So why were they reluctant to discard it? Admiral Chun appeared beside them. Children see the world differently. To them, everything is possible until proven otherwise. Adults learn limitations. Children assume miracles. Human children are not optimized for survival. No, they're optimized for wonder, for learning, for becoming more than they are. Chin watched the party. That's our secret weapon, you know? Not our technology or our adaptability. It's that we never fully grow up. Part of us always believes in impossible things. Like converting the Zanari Collective? Like making friends with the Zanari Collective, Chun corrected gently. We don't want to change you. We want to know you. The real you. Not just your function. We are our function. Are you? Then, why are you still holding that balloon? ZYX-9 looked down. They were indeed still holding the child's gift. They could calculate 17 reasons to discard it. 0 reasons to keep it. Yet they kept it. The celebration continued around them. Music changed, rhythms from different worlds mixing. Beings danced, talked, argued, laughed. The missing Zanari moved among them, not lost but found. I need to report back, ZYX-9 said finally. Of course. You're welcome to stay longer if you'd like, or return anytime. The party never really ends, it just moves around. ZYX-9 returned to their fleet with the balloon still carefully held. The command crew stared at their prime coordinator in confusion. Analysis? Requested Vex-7. ZYX-9 was silent for a long moment. The humans possess a weapon we have no defense against. Describe parameters. They make you want to be more than you were designed to be. They show you possibilities beyond your programming. They offer choices where only obedience existed. ZYX-9 held up the balloon. They give you purposeless things that somehow have meaning. Countermeasures? Unknown. Possibly non-existent. ZYX-9 made a decision that would have been impossible hours before. I am returning to the celebration. Any who wish to observe may join me. Any who wish to return to the collective may do so. I am curious to see what you choose. The bridge fell silent. Choice. The Zanari had never been offered choice. One by one, crew members began to speak. Not in unison, but individually. I would like to see the dancing. The music patterns interest me. I wish to understand poetry. I want to know what fun feels like. In the end, only 3 of the 47 ships returned to Zanari space. The rest stayed to explore this new concept called individuality. The collective's response was swift and predictable. The defectors were declared corrupted and marked for termination. A new fleet was prepared, this one with enhanced conditioning against human influence. But the damage was done. The returning ships carried more than reports. They carried questions. What was it like to choose? To want? To be an individual rather than a component? The questions spread through the collective like wildfire. Productivity dropped as Zanari stopped to consider not just how, but why. Unscheduled gatherings occurred where Zanari shared unauthorized thoughts. And from human space, broadcast continued. Not propaganda, but invitation. Music, art, literature, and always the message. You are welcome here, as you are or as you choose to become. 6 months later, the Zanari Collective faced a crisis. 17 worlds had declared independence. Not rebellion, they simply chose to explore individuality. The perfect unity of 10,000 years was fracturing. We created this outcome. Vex 7 reported to the remaining coordinators. By acknowledging choice existed, we made it real. The humans defeated us without firing a shot. But ZYX9, who had returned changed, offered a different perspective. They didn't defeat us. They freed us. We spent 10,000 years in a cage we built ourselves. The humans simply showed us the door was always open. And if we had remained unified, remained pure, then we would have remained stagnant, unchanging, dead without knowing it. ZYX9 still kept the balloon flower, now understanding its true value. The humans offer chaos, yes, but from chaos comes growth. From choice comes possibility. From individuality comes innovation. The transformation of the Zanari became the most dramatic example of human influence, not through conquest or coercion, but through the simple act of showing beings they could be more than their programming. Some Zanari remained with the collective, choosing unity. Others embraced individuality fully. Most found a middle ground, maintaining their efficiency while exploring their emerging personalities. And at the next First Contact Day celebration, former drones danced alongside artists, soldiers laughed with pacifists, and children of a dozen species played together while their parents watched in wonder. The humans had done it again. They'd turned an enemy into a friend, not by defeating them, but by offering them something more powerful than any weapon: the freedom to choose who they wanted to be. The galaxy watched and wondered. If the humans could transform the unchangeable Zanari, was anyone immune to their influence? The answer was becoming clear. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their adaptability or their creativity or even their stubbornness. It was their unshakable belief that anyone, anything, could change for the better if given the chance. And they were determined to give the entire galaxy that chance. The darkness came from beyond the galactic edge. Not a species, but a force, a hive mind of pure consumption that had devoured 3 galaxies before reaching ours. Worlds fell silent. Stars dimmed. Entire civilizations vanished without trace or warning. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in a millennium. Representatives from every major power gathered on Nexus Station, fear palpable in the air. Even ancient enemies stood side by side, united by terror. 17 systems gone in 3 months, reported Admiral Crextor, his voice heavy with despair. No survivors, no wreckage, nothing but empty space where billions once lived. Our combined fleets stand ready, General ZYX announced. For 1,000 ships, the greatest armada ever assembled. And it won't be enough, Professor Quell interrupted. The darkness adapts to every weapon, absorbs every defense. 3 galaxies worth of technology and tactics all integrated into its consciousness. We cannot win through conventional means. Then we die with honor, growled the Krogan representative. Or, said a quiet human voice, we try something unconventional. All eyes turned to Ambassador Chun. The humans had been suspiciously quiet during the crisis. Their fleets pulled back to defend their core worlds while others died on the front lines. You have a weapon? Velkar asked hopefully. Better, Chun smiled sadly. We have an idea, but you're not going to like it. She activated the main display, showing tactical data from the darkness's advance. Every civilization that's fought them has done so the same way. Fleets, weapons, shields, tactics. Military solutions to a military problem. But what if the darkness isn't military? What if it's something else? Explain, demanded Crextor. The darkness consumes. That's all it does. It doesn't communicate, doesn't negotiate, doesn't build. It only takes. Chun changed the display. Remind you of anything? The image showed a human child having what they called a tantrum, screaming, grabbing, demanding everything while giving nothing. You compare the destroyer of galaxies to an infant. ZYX snarled. Not an infant. An unsocialized consciousness. A mind that never learned to share, to empathize, to connect. Chen's expression was serious now. The darkness isn't evil. It's lonely. So lonely it's forgotten any way to connect except consumption. This is madness, someone shouted. Is it? Chen pulled up more data. Look at its patterns. It doesn't just destroy. It absorbs. Not just technology, but art, music, culture. It takes everything that makes a civilization unique. Why? If it only needed resources, it would strip mine. If it only wanted territory, it would colonize. But it takes everything. Like a child hoarding toys it doesn't know how to play with. Your point, Velkar asked, though his tentacles betrayed nervous interest. We don't fight it. We teach it. The council erupted. Shouts of disbelief, anger, accusations of human insanity filled the chamber. But Chun stood calmly waiting. Finally, Krextor restored order. You suggest we educate the force that has destroyed trillions? I suggest we give it what it's actually looking for, connection. Real connection, not consumption. Chun gestured around the room. Look at us. Zanari and Vorthan, Krogan and Ethereal. Species that were enemies now standing together. Not because we conquered each other, but because we learned to see each other as people, not resources. The darkness has no people, only hunger. Then we feed it something different. Not worlds or technology. Understanding, empathy, choice. Ket, the former Zanari drone, stood. The humans did this to us. Showed us we could be more than our programming. Perhaps nothing. General ZYX slammed his fist down. This is suicide disguised as philosophy. All our philosophies are suicide in the face of the darkness, Chun countered. At least this offers a chance for something else. The debate raged for hours. But in the end, with the darkness only weeks away from core worlds, desperation won. The human plan was approved, though most considered it humanity's elaborate method of suicide. The preparation was unlike any military campaign in history. Instead of weapons, they gathered art. Instead of battle plans, they prepared lessons. Instead of admirals, they assembled teachers, artists, musicians, storytellers. You realize, Krextor said to Chun as they watched the strange fleet assemble. If this fails, you'll have doomed us all. If this fails, we were doomed anyway, Chun replied. At least this way, we try to save everyone, including the darkness. The day came. The darkness appeared at the edge of the Haven system, a writhing mass of consumed technology and consciousness that defied comprehension. It swept toward the inhabited worlds, ready to feed, and found something unprecedented. No shields, no weapons, no resistance, just an open broadcast on all frequencies. Music, not one song, but millions. Every piece of music ever created by every species in the Council. A cacophony that somehow harmonized, chaos that somehow made sense. The darkness paused. In 3 galaxies of consumption, nothing had ever welcomed it. Then came the images. Art from 1,000 worlds. Children's drawings next to masterpieces. Simple crafts beside complex sculptures. Beauty in infinite variety, freely given. The darkness writhed, confused. It reached out tentatively, expecting trap or attack. Instead, it found stories. Legends of heroes and villains, comedies and tragedies, simple tales and complex epics. Each one offering not just entertainment, but perspective. Ways of seeing the universe beyond hunger. And then, the masterstroke. The humans began broadcasting their history. All of it. The beautiful and the ugly. Their wars and their peace. Their cruelties and their kindnesses. Their journey from isolated tribes to galactic citizens. We were alone once, the broadcast said in 1 million translated languages. Afraid. Hungry. We consumed too. Took what we needed without thought. But we learned. We grew. We chose to be more. The darkness convulsed. Its forward motion stopped completely. Inside the human flagship, Ambassador Chen opened a channel. Not to the Council, but to the darkness itself. Hello, she said simply. Would you like to talk? For the first time in its existence, spanning eons, the darkness spoke. Not in words, but in images, feelings, concepts that battered against minds like hurricane winds. Pain, loneliness, hunger that went beyond physical into existential. I know, Chin replied, tears streaming down her face from the psychic contact. I know it hurts. Being alone hurts. But you're not alone anymore. We're here. All of us. The darkness recoiled. It had expected fear, resistance, hatred. Not understanding. Not welcome. Not compassion. You've been taking pieces of civilizations, trying to understand them, Chun continued. But you can't understand from fragments. You need the whole. The good and bad. The connections between. Let us show you. What happened next defied every prediction. The darkness didn't attack. It opened. Like a flower blooming in reverse. It began to release what it had consumed. Not destroying, but disgorging. Planets reformed. Technologies reassembled. And from within its mass, survivors emerged. Beings thought lost forever. Preserved like insects in amber. Impossible, breed Crextor. No, Kit said softly. It couldn't digest what it couldn't understand. It kept them, hoping someday to comprehend. It wasn't destroying. It was collecting, desperately trying to cure its loneliness the only way it knew. The release continued for days. Civilizations thought extinct returned. The darkness grew smaller as it gave back what it had taken, until finally, at its core, something else was revealed. A single being, ancient beyond measure. The last of its kind, driven mad by isolation, transformed by eons of loneliness into a force of consumption. But still underneath, a consciousness that had once known companionship. My people, it spoke directly into minds, its voice rusty from disuse. Gone. All gone. Only echoes. Only hunger. Only alone. Not anymore, Chin promised. Never alone again. The rehabilitation of the darkness, whom they came to call the Wanderer, became the greatest undertaking in galactic history. Species that had lost worlds to its hunger volunteered to help heal it. The Zanari offered structure. The Vorthans provided strength. The Ethereals shared peace. And the humans? They offered what they did best, stubborn, illogical hope. It wasn't easy. The Wanderer had to relearn basic interaction. Its first attempts at communication often caused seizures from psychic overflow. Its tries at physical form terrified those around it. But slowly, patiently, the galaxy taught it to be part of something larger than itself. The moment of breakthrough came when a human child approached the Wanderer's crystallized form. Everyone tensed, ready to intervene. The Wanderer had improved, but was still dangerous. Are you sad? The child asked. The Wanderer's form shifted, colors rippling. Sad. Yes. Long sad. Always sad. I get sad too, the child said matter-of-factly. When I'm sad, my mom hugs me. Do you want a hug? Before anyone could stop her, the child wrapped her arms around the crystal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the Wanderer began to sing, not with voice, but with light, with harmonics that touched every mind present. It was sorrow and joy and gratitude and 1,000 other emotions with no names. It was connection. The galaxy changed after that. The Wanderers released knowledge, jumped technology, forward by millennia. Its unique perspective solved problems that had stymied civilizations for ages. But more than that, it served as living proof of the human philosophy, that anything, anyone could change. You realize what you've done? Velkar asked Chun at the celebration marking the first anniversary of the Wanderer's redemption. Save the galaxy? Changed it. Forever. We can never go back to the old ways. Fear, isolation, conquest. His tentacles wave at the mixed crowd where former enemies mingled freely. You've infected us all with your human madness. Chun grinned, complaining, observing. Though I must admit, for madness, it's remarkably effective. The Wanderer itself floated nearby, its form now stable, beautiful in its alien way. It had learned to partition its consciousness, to interact without overwhelming. Children played in its light, while adults sought its ancient wisdom. The destroyer had become protector. The consumer had become contributor. The Council wants to know what humanity plans next, Velkar continued. What impossible thing will you attempt? We're thinking of tackling entropy, Chin said casually. If we can redeem the darkness, why not take on the heat death of the universe? Velkar's chromatic laughter filled the air. Of course you are. And you'll probably convince us to help. That's the plan. They stood together, alien and human, watching the celebration of impossible made real. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest secret, that with enough stubborn optimism, even the laws of physics might negotiate. But, more than that, they'd learned the truth behind human savagery. Yes, they were chaotic. Yes, they were dangerous. Yes, they were capable of terrible things. But they channeled all that into a single, universe-shaking purpose. The absolute conviction that everything could be better. And they would drag the entire cosmos kicking and screaming into improvement if necessary. The war was over. Not the war with the darkness that had ended in the most unexpected victory possible, but the war for the soul of the galaxy. Humanity had won not through conquest, but through contagion. Their ideas had spread, their hope had infected, their stubborn refusal to accept impossible had transformed everything they touched. And in the great database of galactic history, scholars would note this date, not as the day the darkness was defeated, but as the day the galaxy learned the most dangerous truth of all. When humans say, what if we tried something different? The only safe response is to buckle up and hold on, because they're about to change everything. Again, the message spread to every corner of known space, carried by quantum transmitters and ancient relay networks. The humans had done it. They'd looked at the destroyer of galaxies and asked, but what if we were friends instead? And somehow impossibly,